Throughout my private pilot training and after I got my certificate, one of the most common questions I get asked is, how much did it all cost? And fortunately, the answer is actually really quite simple. It cost every penny I had, every second of my life, every ounce of my soul. Are souls measured in ounces? Every soul unit of my soul. No, but seriously, it was expensive. But I kept meticulous records of everything I spent money on because I love spreadsheets. In terms of things I love, there's like God, my wife, my family, flying airplanes, and then spreadsheets. So I tracked all my expenses and I'm going to share the results with you today. Before we get started though, I separated my costs into two categories. There's things that absolutely count and things that don't necessarily count. And I guess it's up to you to decide which ones really count as part of the cost of getting a pilot certificate and which ones don't. So things that I put in the doesn't necessarily count category include my very first flight lesson, just because it was about 7 years before I really started flight training. First flight cost $129. Okay, the next cost, I've got a GoPro mount that I bought and a cable for it. That was $45.02. That was partially for me because I think that recording my flights did help out, but it was really more for the YouTube channel. Next up, I bought a child headset for $91. One for my kid so that she could tag along on a lesson. I don't really think that counts. Next up is a headset that I bought from a friend for $100. I don't think that necessarily counts because it was a second headset. I already had another one. I just bought this one because it was a good deal and I knew I'd need one for a passenger eventually. Next, we've got a flight lesson in Hawaii. It was $304, which is more expensive than most of my flight lessons. That was a really fun flight that I took my wife on for our anniversary trip. It was cheaper than a helicopter tour, and it was a great way to see the island. So yes, it was flight training, but it was kind of more just for fun on the side. Definitely didn't need it to get my certificate. And finally, this one's a whole separate story, but to make a long story short, a friend helped me with a maintenance issue getting something out of my gas tank, and I decided to repay him by giving him some of the gas that we drained out. I believe I gave him about $34 worth of gas. So the total of all of the things that maybe kind of count is $703.55. All right, now let's get into the stuff that definitely counts. So let's start with the cost of gear. You really don't need to buy that much gear. All I bought was a checklist, which I didn't really end up using. I ended up making my own, but I bought it. It was $19.78. I bought a check ride test prep book, the Kindle edition, for $3. You'll also want a plotter and a little slide rule flight computer thing, which are dirt cheap, but actually my ground school provided them for me. You may want to buy the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge and perhaps some other books, but you can also get those for free as PDFs. I find I have more time to read on my phone than I do to sit down with a book anyway, but I do have a paper copy of the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, but that was also given to me for free. The main headset I used was given to me as a gift, so I didn't spend any money on that, but even if I did, this is a Rugged Air, which is a great headset, and it's only like $90. Just a side note, so this is my Rugged Air headset, and in my opinion, this is the best headset you can get for your dollar. It's pretty much the cheapest headset out there, which might make you think, well, clearly it's not a very good headset. But I think it's actually a great headset as far as passive noise reduction headsets go. And if you don't believe me, look at the other reviews on Amazon. Lots of people love this headset. If you do decide to buy this headset, I'd appreciate it if you use the link that I put in the description of this video. I'll get a little portion of the profits and that'll buy me a little bit of avgas so I can fly a little bit more. And I also used a flight bag. This is not a particularly cheap flight bag. It's from Sporties, but it was a gift, so I'm not counting that either. But before I got it, I just used a regular backpack I had lying around, and that worked just fine too. I also used a knee board, which I also got as a gift. Really, for a couple of years before I started my training, I only asked for pilot gear for Christmas and birthday, so that saved me some money there. Except that most of it came from my wife, and we share a checking account, so I guess I did sort of pay for these, but whatever, I'm not counting it. Finally, I bought a paper sectional chart and the chart supplement, which is $17.72 together. And if you happen to notice that the camera dropped a little bit on that last clip, it's because the main thing that I use my chart supplement book for is holding up my camera when I do these videos. So the total that I spent on gear, excluding the stuff that doesn't necessarily count, was actually only $40.50. Though I kind of cheated by getting a lot of gifts. Next expense you'll want to think about is ground school. I lucked out there as well. I got my ground school completely free just because I work for a company that's related to aviation, and that's just one of the perks. My next expense was the FAA knowledge or written test, which cost me $173 to take. And then there was the doctor's visit for my medical certificate, which was $170. I did my flight training as part of a flying club, which meant I had to pay $250 up front as a buy-in, and then $250 per month over the course of the 9 months that it took me to get my certificate. So that comes out to another $2,500 there. But the advantage of a club is then you end up paying less per hour for the airplane. So I only had to pay $55 an hour plus gas. One cool thing about my flight club is that they actually bill by tach time on the Cherokee 140. Tach time isn't actually the amount of time the engine is running. It's an hourly time, but it's based on how fast the engine is running. So even though I logged 52.2 hours in the club's Cherokee, I was only billed for 40.4 hours of tach time at $55 an hour, so that comes out to $2,222. Now I was a little bit unlucky in my flight training because like weeks after I started my flight training, Vlad decides, hey, the world's too great right now, let's go invade Ukraine, and the result is that gas prices skyrocket. So I paid an average of $6.59 per gallon of gas, and over the course of my training, I burned 343.8 gallons of gas, meaning I spent a total of $2,245.87 on gas for the airplane. Now, an interesting little tidbit about that is that I logged a little over 50 hours in the Cherokee, and that means I only was burning like a little less than 6.5 gallons per hour. Now, a Cherokee 140 that has the 160 horsepower STC, like mine, is supposed to burn something like 8 gallons an hour, more or less. One nice thing about training is that you're spending a lot of time on the ground, doing your taxiing, doing your run-ups, talking to the instructor, and a lot of time in the flight pattern when you're typically running at pretty low power settings and you burn much less gas than at cruise speed. So if you are paying for gas in your flight training, one thing you can look forward to is that you probably will be spending less gas than you might think per hour. Now, if anyone out there is thinking, man, gas is so expensive right now, I'd love to start my flight training, but I just don't want to do it when gas is so expensive. It just keeps going and going. I don't know if it's ever going to stop. I just want to put it in perspective a little bit. I think that the amount I paid for gas, it was about $1.50 more per gallon than it would have been had I trained like 6 months before. Would have saved me something like $300 to $500. $300 to $500, I mean, that's not nothing. I'd love to save $300 to $500, but that's the equivalent of like 2 flight hours, right? So if you can find a way to learn faster and save yourself 2 flight hours, that's the same as the difference in gas prices. We're not talking thousands of dollars. I also did one flight with a different flight school where they charged a wet rate for the airplane. That means it included fuel in the price. So I'm tracking that separately because I don't know how much of it was for the fuel and how much was for the airplane. But that was $188.40 for 1 hour. If you've enjoyed me geeking out about all the numbers here so far, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed. Next comes the fee for my certified flight instructors, or CFIs. Now I ended up logging 33.5 hours of flight with a flight instructor, but I ended up paying for 48.9 hours. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. The main one is that you pay instructors for more than just the time they spend flying with you. They also spend some time teaching you on the ground. And another reason is that I tended to kind of round up on my hours when I was paying them, just because CFIs aren't making a ton of money. They're doing it because they want to help you. I may be a cheapskate, but my CFIs are really helping me out and I want to be good to them. So that means I ended up paying for 1.46 hours of CFI time for every 1 hour of actual dual flight time. I'm going to say that's probably significantly less than what most people pay, and that's because I really tried to make an effort to learn as much as I could before my flights and show up and just be ready to fly. Now, I think it's great that I tried to be prepared, and I think I did save money by kind of minimizing that ground instruction time. But if I had to do it again, I think I probably could have benefited from a little bit more time on the ground with the flight instructors. I think most people spend closer to 1 hour of ground instruction for every hour of flight instruction. So my flight club's instructors charge $50 an hour, so that comes out to $2,445 that I spent on flight instructors. Plus, there was the $145 that I spent for that flight instructor at the other club. Now that one's a little higher because we spent a good amount of time on the ground because he was quizzing me to get ready for the oral portion of my check ride. So that comes out to a total of $2,590 that I spent on flight instructors. And then my last expense would be the $800 that I paid for the designated pilot examiner, or DPE, to take my check ride, which is the test at the very end. Note, during the check ride, I also have to pay to rent the plane and to pay the gas, but I already accounted for that earlier. So that brings my grand total to $10,929.77. Or if you're including all of those things I mentioned at the beginning that maybe kind of sort of count, that would be $11,633.32. Now, one thing that just kills me is that my first attempt on the check ride, I was not even able to do the check ride because the registration in my airplane was missing. Someone in the flight club was supposed to put it in and didn't. I'll have a whole different video on that. The examiner didn't charge me for that since we didn't actually start the test, but we weren't able to reschedule for like 2 or 3 more weeks, and I needed to get in some extra practice to stay current. Assuming that I would have passed the check ride had I taken it the original date I scheduled it, which granted may be a big if, it would have saved me around $1,500, which would have put me under the $10,000 mark. But honestly, I don't know of anyone who just was able to schedule their check ride, have it happen on the day they wanted, and didn't run into some sort of weather problems or maintenance problems or something like that. So it seems like in most cases you end up spending a little money that you didn't necessarily plan for at the end, just kind of waiting for your check ride to actually work out. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing all the details of the total cost for me. I apologize if I went a little too deep into the nitty-gritty of all the numbers. Like I said, I like spreadsheets and I like numbers. Now, that's what it cost me. That does not mean it's what it's going to cost you. Of course, there's no way to know for sure how much it's going to cost you to get a private pilot's license, but I'm putting together a little guide that will help you make a good estimate of how much it'll cost you. And once that video is ready, I'll go ahead and put a link up right there, and I'll put a link in the description as well. And for anyone who's watching who is already a private pilot, I'd love to hear about how much it cost you. And if you care to share, also where and when you got your certificate. Let me know in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.